I'm Ron Ferguson, sitting with Laurie Henderson, and we're going to have a conversation about the Tripod 7 Cs and related things. Just to give you a bit of background, I've been working on tripod surveys for nearly 20 years now. This work started in Shaker Heights, Ohio, around the late 1990s, early 2000s. And our goal initially was to understand how students from different backgrounds were experiencing the classrooms differently and the different ways that they were engaging. So initially we were focused on student engagement, and then we started to think more about what teachers were actually doing in classrooms. That led to particular framings and reframings of the surveys. Eventually, around 2009, the Gates Foundation launched its Measures of Effective Teaching project. The tripod surveys ended up being the student voice piece of the Measures of Effective Teaching project. We learned some new things about how different aspects of teaching predict, particularly student test score gains over time. We also learned some things about how they predict student attitudes and aspirations and enjoyment in the classroom. And so we've done quite a bit of work now, quite a bit of research, understanding how the things that teachers do in the classroom affect the experiences that students have. And what we want to do here is to share some of what we learned about that, partly in conversation. I'm going to kick it off with a poem that's written from the perspective of a teacher whose students have answered the survey on the Tripod 7 Cs. And the poem is called My Students Took a Survey. My students took a survey on the Tripod 7 Cs. They were asked to answer questions focused very much on me. First among the C's is caring, and with focused concentration, students answered how my teaching models personalization. Next, the topic is conferring, and for this C among the questions, there are queries asking students about classroom conversations. Next, the C is captivation, and the survey seeks to find if my lessons are so interesting they stimulate young minds. Clarify comes next in order, and my students all are asked whether when things get confusing, understanding comes to pass. Then there is consolidation, focused largely on connections, asking students if we summarize and catch our misconceptions. Challenge is the C for whether, when the work gets really tough, I insist they keep on trying, even though the going's rough. This includes demands for rigor, where to understand things best, I press them hard to concentrate despite their sense of stress. The seventh of the C's concerns the topic of control. Keeping kids on task and working hard achieves results twofold. Yes, my students answered questions focused on the 7 C's, and the answers that they gave show that they really do know me. Some were things I was aware of, others, frankly, were surprising. But the truth was there, unfettered, and I started analyzing. I figured out some things that I have never thought to do. And now each morning that I rise, I cannot wait to get to school. Yes, my students took a survey on the Tripod 7 Cs. They were asked to answer questions focused very much on me. At first, I was a skeptic, but I now have come to know that my students' insights really can show me some ways to go. So that's how I think a lot of teachers feel. Many folks start off, well, how can my students help me understand how to teach? They're not experts. I've had all the education. But we have to realize that there are lots of young people sitting in our classes, experiencing our classes every day. The teachers in Pittsburgh had a nice way to think about it. They said some of the things that our students said weren't quite right, but the fact that they perceive things that way gives us some things to think about. We need to do things differently so that the students' perceptions will align with what we know we're trying to do in the classroom. We like to emphasize that what students have given us back on the surveys is not absolute truth. It's their perception. Okay, but perception is reality.
Right.
For the people who have those perceptions. And so we want to reflect and not deflect when we get this feedback. Okay, that phrase, that distinction came from the vice chair of a union in one of the school districts. He said, when we give our teachers the results back, we want to help them to not be preoccupied with finding reasons not to take seriously what the student feedback was. Okay. Instead, we want them to look at their feedback and say, well, even if I don't agree with it, why would my students have thought that?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the reflect
Yeah.
that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is that when teachers decide they want to improve, when they decide they want to hit a home run with their students, the things that they can learn from the tripod feedback are helpful input.
Yeah.
Okay, the tripod feedback all by itself does not flip a switch and make somebody decide all of a sudden that they want to get better. Okay, it might for a few people, but in general, that desire to want to get better has to come from someplace else.
Right.
Right, and I think for a lot of people that can come when they remember why they become teachers in the first place. Okay, a lot of people who became teachers because they like kids. And they want to have an effect on other people's lives.
Right.
They have a sense of purpose, sense of meaning in their own lives, right? And with the feedback from students is one tool to help teachers to achieve that.
Yeah, I love how manageable it makes your improvement process, because I think when I reflect back on my own experience, if I knew one thing to change, I could start there and then at least feel some sense of urgency about where to begin that journey.
Yeah. And these are also things that teachers can request feedback on a regular basis on. They don't have to wait for the tripod surveys.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can have exit slips at the end of the day. You can have at the end of the week a little what went well for you this week, what didn't go so well. What would you like me to do differently? That kind of feedback can be ongoing.
Right.
And the survey feedback can help you to figure out what you might emphasize in that. But the more back and forth, the more exchange, the more communication between the teachers and the students, the better everybody's experience is going to be.